Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. My very special guest today is author Holly C. LaBarbera. Her debut novel is out June 11th. It's called All I Know. And in her debut novel by Buckberg Mountain Books, Holly deftly tells the story of a young woman who overcomes childhood trauma and tragedy to build a life with the boy she's always loved. As a psychotherapist and a professor, Holly uses her extensive knowledge and experience to explore the complexities of romantic relationships, as well as those within families and among friends, showing that love comes in many forms, including choosing to love oneself. Welcome back, Holly.
Thank you.
You're going to honor us with a reading from the new novel, All I Know.
I am.
Thank you.
Okay. I was 8 maybe, and we were at the Tyler's house on a hot, sticky summer day. Josh suggested rock hopping along the water we called Lake Tyler and headed off with Nick and Bobby, then rounded back to where Kade was drawing alone and encouraged him to join them, which I remember noticing and appreciating, both for Kade's benefit and mine, since it meant I could go too. I grabbed Stephanie's hand and pulled her along with me. The boys picked out a route along the shore, jumping from boulder to boulder, skirting the edges of the water. They bounded off ahead of us, and I was happy for Kade that he kept up with them easily. Even Stephanie was ahead of me. I was going slowly, being especially careful because of my inherent lack of coordination. Before I knew it, the boys were leaping past me, having finished their course and starting over, obviously racing this time. Josh was uncharacteristically bringing up the rear, perhaps to ensure that Kade didn't come in last, an unusual move for competitive Josh, but he'd probably won this race plenty of times and figured he would win again on the next go-round. When he jumped past me, an essence of momentary closeness made me almost fall. He noticed my stumble and came back, taking my hand to help me balance. My world felt different in that moment, and even though it was a long time ago, I remember the sensation clearly. When Josh takes my hand today, it feels nice and natural, but not like the world is different. The world is what it is. Nobody's hand is going to change that.
I'm intrigued. Thank you for reading that to us.
You're welcome.
When did you first start writing?
Not until about 2016. So not even, maybe a little later. Anyway, around 10 years ago, 8 or 9, 10 years ago.
When you first started writing as a
writing a book. That was the
right.
first time I started writing a book. I have in this book, Kai writes a lot of letters, and I have written letters. I am very old school on that. I was pen pals with my grandma since I was a little kid and all the way up until I was 30, 40 years old or whenever she died. So yeah,
What
so
would you write to your grandmother?
What did I write?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because after she passed, my mom sent me some letters that my grandma had kept of mine. And I wrote to her about boys. I wrote to her about my friend drama. And it was just so silly because
Would you
like
tell her
why
secrets?
I did. I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if they were even secrets at the time, but I told her things that I'm thinking now, like, why was she wouldn't have been interested in that, except that she was because I was her granddaughter. And so
Was
yeah.
she the only person that you were a pen pal with like this, like with this
Well,
relationship with your grandmother?
probably the longest. One of my college roommates, we stayed pen pals after college, and we would write about books and about our lives and whatever, which was funny because even when we had phones and texting and whatever, like we wrote to each other on paper. So I've had a few people that I've been pen pals with, but yeah, my grandma was definitely the longest running.
I agree with you that I mean handwritten notes or letters, it's a
Mhm.
lost art form, really, isn't it? Like it's like so many things. I know that you love to read a book and the hold the book and smell the paper and the print and the ink.
I do.
I'm the same way. I mean, and the same with writing a letter.
Mhm.
Getting a handwritten letter, it beats an Amazon package any old day, doesn't it?
It does.
Getting
It
an
does.
Amazon package.
Yeah, I love it. So I think I got off course of your question, but oh, writing. So yeah, I've informally written a lot and some journaling and things like that. But yeah, my first foray into writing a book was around 2016, I think, ish, is when I started.
What's the hardest part about sitting down and saying, I'm writing, I'm going to write all I know? That's,
Well,
what's the
I
hardest
mean,
part to get started for you as a writer?
well, getting started is actually not at all the hardest part. So when I started the first book, this is the first book I'm publishing, but it's not the first book I wrote. I'm going to circle back to the first book I wrote and do some revisions and make that one happen sometime in the future. But um, when I'm starting a book, it feels like it's just kind of pouring out of me. Like I just, when I wrote my first book, my middle son was starting college, and it just, last was on the verge of leaving, and I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to fill up, I need a new relationship. And so I created these characters to have relationships with. And but once I was in it, it just flowed, and like the actual writing of it didn't feel hard to me in any of the books. I've written three that are all in different stages, but the revising and editing, that is the hard part. The like just sticking with that and not, like, that's drudgery. That's harder to me.
How many times did you go back and write, rewrite, edit all I know? Did you count?
I can't
Times?
even count. Like, yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah, that editing is not fun. I agree with you.
Oh,
Just getting it out there is great and letting it flow. Is there a character or which character I should say has taught you something about yourself that you didn't know,
mm.
but came out through the character development and writing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I guess Kai's an easy answer because she's the main character, but she is the main character. So I think that, and I'm not sure if it was entirely new information, but I think thinking about the women in my life and how impactful they are to who I am. My grandma that I said, my mom, my girlfriends are just like, my sister. I don't, it would be really hard for me to think of being where I am in my life without those people. And so I think again, this is what I was saying about, it started off as a story about Kai and Josh, but I think finding that the things that ended up being most powerful for Kai were these other women. And I don't know if I would say I don't want to diss on my husband by saying they're the most important, but the women in my life have been super important to me. So, and I think that writing Kai brought that even more evident to me.
What is the most interesting thing that you find about your main character, Kai, and your new debut novel, All I Know?
Um, that she, I think just her tenacity and determination. And I think it's funny because there's parts in the book where she feels very kind of wishy-washy, very like almost the backseat of her own story. And so she's there for a while. And when I was editing and had friends help, writing partners and things, saying like she has no like it's not active in her own life, and that was frustrating, and parts that went on too long at parts at moments in the book, and so that was part of the editing process. But I think like finding her, she kind of needed to get stuck for a while in order to move, and so
It's real. That's why
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
it's
we
a
all
real.
want to be like, oh, I want to just do the next thing, and it's hard to make those changes in our life.
Yeah, that's
And
what I was referring to. As a with your profession, is it hard not to just fix it for her, right
Oh,
away?
I would love
But
to fix it. It's just you can't. Like nobody's gonna listen. And yeah. So I think it's just There was this Anna Quinlan essay that she talks about. Somebody asked her, what would you tell your younger self? And she's like, there's nothing. They wouldn't listen. Like my younger self wouldn't listen to me. Like you just have to go through it
Yeah.
to get there. So
Yeah. Well, Holly, we're going to take another break. But before we do, could
okay.
I ask you to read another passage for us from?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while you're getting set up there, I'll let everybody, if you're just tuning in, I'll let you know that we are talking to author Holly LaBarbera. Her debut novel is out on June 11th in just a few days. All I Know. It's published by Buckberg Mountain Books. You can go to hollylabarbera.com. And I don't know if you can pre-order now, but it'll be available in just a few days. Be patient, but don't forget this is an incredible first novel by Holly C. LaBarbera. Holly, are you ready?
I am. So this next scene I'm going to read, it happens, Kai's 12, Josh is 16, and he's come to stay with her family after kind of a crisis at his house. And Kai kind of shocks him by impulsively kissing him one night. And the next day she goes looking for him to say sorry because she's crushing on him, but he sees her like a little sister. So she goes and apologizes to him, and after kind of the apology part is done, they continue having a conversation. So that's what this is. Um, this has been a weird day, I said. You're telling me, Josh answered. I had a talk with my mom that was different than the ones we've had before, and this is different too, talking with you like this. But I talked to my dad, and that was just the same. I don't know, it's just got me all confused. Confused about what? He turned his head toward me, his arm shading his face, but not blocking his eyes now. I kept looking up at the sky. Watching the light through the leaves made it easier to articulate my thoughts. Is it better to tell people what you think or to tell them what they want to hear? Dang, that's a serious question. He rolled back into his contemplative position, arm over eyes. I have no clue. I usually tell my dad what he wants to hear and do what he wants me to do, and my life goes along just fine. Then I stand up to him and I get punched in the face and kicked out of the house. Yeah, that's what I mean. Mom said I should use my voice, not worry about what other people want to hear. But then she told me what I should say to you and to Dad, and it was what you both wanted to hear, not what I really wanted to say. A breeze rustled the leaves above me, and I squinted as the sun poked through the fresh spaces. I usually tell my dad what he wants to hear because he fights with my mom when she says what she actually thinks, I continued. It works better my way, but I don't really like how it feels. I came out here to tell you what you wanted to hear, but then I told you what I really thought, and that felt better. I rolled my head to look at him. It's confusing. It's confusing because it's bullshit. Is that your favorite word? I teased. It's my life right now, he joked back, although it wasn't really a joke. It's like they say to do it one way, but they don't really mean it, and they definitely don't do it that way, I said. I've been thinking about all this since my mom put me on that train in the middle of the night, and I still don't have a clue, Josh said. The one thing I do know is that some people clearly don't want to know what we're thinking or how we feel. Some people definitely want us to tell them what they want to hear. And if we want to live with those people without causing problems, we better do it their way. You're going to do it that way with your dad? You bet, but I'm also going to get out of there as soon as I possibly can. College, work, whatever. I'm out of there 1 year from now. I can keep my mouth shut for a year, but then I don't want to be like that. I want to be someone who means what I say and does what feels right. I want to be that kind of person too. Maybe just not with my dad. Yeah, probably not with our dads, but maybe with each other. Maybe, Josh peeked at me again, as long as you stay in your lane. I smiled at him and looked back at the sky. I wasn't going to say anything that wasn't true, so I kept my mouth shut. I saw him shake his head a little, grinning at my intentional non-response. I was thinking all these deep and profound thoughts, but mostly, really, truly, predominantly, I was thinking about Josh lying next to me, how someday maybe he would reach over and take my hand or roll over and kiss me, but how right now it was nice to just lie here next to him and know that he knew what I was thinking and feeling and that he was still there beside me. He didn't like it, it wasn't ideal, but he was hanging in here with me, and that meant a lot.